Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, episode 25. I'm Michael
I'm
LeBlanc.
Sylvain Charlebois.
The Food Professor is presented by Omnovos, the digital customer engagement solution for grocery and restaurant marketers, helping you solve your customers' most daunting question: what should I eat today? We'll find out how you can get personal and gross sales with Omnovos at realcustomerengagement.com. Sylvain, I'm crossing the stream, so to speak, as they would say in Ghostbusters. I've got two of my great podcast partners on the same episode from Remarkable Retail Podcast. Stevse Dennis, top retail strategist, best-selling author, just released the second all-new updated edition of his book, Remarkable Retail. And so we're going to hone in on the grocery sector particularly. We'll start more broadly around retail strategy, but Steve's going to help us hone in on what grocers need to think about to compete, and then we'll talk about some of the best in class US, because he's out of Dallas, and he knows of and works with some retailers we may not have heard of. Maybe our listeners have, but some I did not and had not. But really interesting, really interesting. So listen, speaking of books though and authors, let's talk about your new book, Poutine Nation. Tell us about the journey in writing the book and what it's all about.
Well, unfortunately, it's in French for now. It was actually originally written in English, but unfortunately, because of COVID, the publisher I was dealing with closed its doors and basically pivoted like everyone else and found a lovely publisher in Montreal, Fides, and they actually translated the book, and now it's released. It's called Poutine Nation: The Glorious Rise of a non-pretentious dish. I'm translating the title, but the book includes two tales. One, I wanted to dive into its origins. Like, why did we create this thing in the first place? Who created it? And what was the context in the 50s and 60s in rural Quebec? Because it's a rural dish. This is really about, the countryside basically providing a new dish to cities, essentially. Typically in cooking, it's the other way around. So I thought that was an amazing story. So I got to interview a bunch of great people who were instrumental in the creation of the dish itself. And the other part is this global pilgrimage. I went around the world to taste poutine and interview people, trying to understand how they see poutine from as non-Canadians, essentially. So this is my sixth book, but it is by far the most fun I've ever had writing a book.
Well, and it comes out just from the pictures you've been posting and on social media of the people you talk to. It's really, as you say, a global journey. And I was thinking, when's the first time I had poutine? And you're absolutely right about rural Quebec, because I'm from Ottawa and spent, we would cross over the bridge into Gatineau and the Outaouais, and being in small towns. I remember they came up and, we were together and a bunch of buddies, and they came up with this dish, and it was poutine. It's the first time I had poutine. But you're absolutely right. It was in rural Quebec. Small town Quebec, and loved it from the start. And it's interesting. It's a great topic because it's kind of taken on a national, what Canada stands for is poutine, right? Even Steve, Steve will mention on our interview together, he has it down in Dallas, but in a certain kind of special way. From eating poutine to your latest research from the the Agri-Food labs, let's talk about stress. Yeah, let's talk about health. Let's talk.
It's kind of funny because
jokingly
I'm
a little
releasing
bit
a book on poutine, but at the same time, our lab is also releasing a study on health and weight management.
Yeah. Well, it is the dichotomy of our lives these days, right? I mean, we've talked over the course of our podcast about this COVID-15, picking off the freshman 15, people eating more at home. But what now we've got some numbers to it. You've gone and done some research, and tell us about your findings and stresses and what.
So we wanted to know whether or not the COVID-15 is a thing, and it is a thing. Canada is much heavier than before COVID, and of course, in adulthood, you should expect to gain weight. I think naturally, everyone, as you grow older, it becomes more difficult to lose weight. But we're talking about undesirable, unintentional weight gain here. And so what we realize is that there's almost 3 Canadians in 5 have actually have seen their weight change in the last 14 months. 43% have actually gained weight in Canada. Undesirable
43%.
43%, and
Wow. 43%.
15% have lost weight, and that's essentially due to stress. And so I would say that there are three main factors. One is
Yeah.
stress, overall stress, and frankly, when you look at the numbers, the younger generations, the millennials and the Generation Zs have been more impacted than other generations. Women have been slightly more impacted as well when it comes to stress as well. The other thing that we think has happened over the last 14 months is meal and management has been really challenged. I mean, our food azimuths, if you will, was not necessarily in balance. I mean, we were asked to work from home and then to work back
Yeah.
home, and so the 3 meal institution really was challenged, and the snacking as well. When you're actually about 100 feet away from your cafeteria all the time, well, 100 feet. Sometimes it's you're in the cafeteria, you're right next to your fridge working away, and so the temptation is
Right.
certainly there.
Working on the kitchen
And
table. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
expectations are different when you work from home,
Well,
and as you know, really people have been more productive at home, but the stress is certainly there because you are expected to respond to emails quicker. You're expected to execute much quicker on anything you need to do, and I suspect that food became that escape, and as a result, people have gained weight.
hmm. Now, looking at the survey, I have the survey in front of me. Talk about this COVID-19. Is there something to that? Like, what's the predominant weight gain? You talked about 45% of folks who've gained weight, but what's the average kind of amount of that? What's the order of magnitude that we're going to be dealing with? Because I think it's a really interesting study because when we think about long-term health implications of the
Oh
COVID
yeah.
crisis, on the one hand, you've got way more people, way more aware of some basic hygiene things. I mean, there's no flu, for example. Maybe we'll be wearing masks. I mean, certainly we're all thinking about our health more than any of us want to be, really. But, is there a downside, again, another downside with a bigger health crisis with issues brought on from weight gain? So what was the average, if you could speak to an average of weight gain, what was your
Yeah,
impression of
so
that?
in terms of putting a number in terms of pounds, what we've noticed is that more women than men have gained weight, but when women have gained weight, they've gained anywhere between 6 to 10 pounds. That's probably the average. For men, it's 11 to 15 pounds. So if men gain more weight,
Hmm.
they actually gain more so than women. That's kind of the average for the younger generations.
Oh,
For the
interesting.
younger generations, for millennials and the Generation Zs, the two groups that have been mostly affected by COVID, we're still looking at a 6 to 10 weight gain, 6 to 10 pounds of weight gain in the last 14 months.
Um, and no doubt some alcohol has contributed to that too. Lots of calories in alcohol. Maybe I know people are drinking perhaps a little bit more. It's kind of averaging out and going out less, right? You're just moving around less, particularly millennials, and not going to bars or restaurants and all that. That activity that just kind of gets you moving and gets going. So, well, all things,
Well,
all
should I
things shall
ask
pass. You're
you,
having a bit.
Michael,
The bubble has been.
have you gained
Hmm.
weight?
Yeah, yeah, I
Oh,
have for
really?
sure, for sure. And some of that is, yeah, and I think I'm looking forward to nicer weather to get back out and kind of get rid of that, be more
Oh,
disciplined
yeah.
around shedding some of that. And I don't know, I'm not necessarily eating more. Actually, I'm pretty
You're
disciplined
spending
about that.
less
We eat
energy.
well here. We like to cook, so I'm just spending less energy. Just get day to day. I'm here, right? So I think I need to be much more disciplined. And we were talking off mic about booking times, and I need to just book it in my calendar. I'm going outside to go biking for a couple hours. I know you're a great cyclist. as well. So I know you're quite you're quite fit. What about yourself? Which side of the ledger are you on?
I haven't gained any weight, of course, but I've worked hard in making sure that I stay fit. So this morning I went for a jog. So I'm because I'm starting to get back into uh, summer shape for cycling in June, July, and August. But I'm mostly concerned for my kids. Really, I have three daughters, and they're
Yeah,
fine. They're
yeah,
fine. It's just their metabolism is very quick, but that's not going to last. It's more about I'm more concerned about habits and staying
yeah.
indoors. So
It
I'm
doesn't last.
trying to make sure that they
Yeah,
go outside as much as
yeah.
possible.
Well, and a little more harder than it used to be in Halifax, right? I mean, we're talking here in mid March. You guys have got some challenges, right? The bubble has been pierced, so to speak, and you've got a bit of COVID challenges. So good luck with that. Welcome to our reality, I
Exactly.
guess I could
Well,
say
I
here in
mean, you guys have had it rough over the
in
winter, and
Toronto.
so we're still.
Yeah,
I consider myself. We consider ourselves to be very lucky. I mean, let's face it, the virus won't spare anyone. Really, it doesn't know any borders or anything like that. So
yeah.
I was expecting at some point that something would happen in our region. So it's happening now. The advantage that we have over Ontario and Quebec is that we're actually in the middle of a vaccine campaign. So we know that eventually it will end, and so we're lucky that way.
Let's talk about late March or sorry April heading into May. Let's talk about your predictions or not predictions, but the work that you did in Canada's food price report. Are the numbers shaping up the way you thought they might in terms of food inflation? We're not quite halfway through the year, but how are you feeling about it?
Yeah,
Yeah, there it
and
is. Yeah, I was talking to someone on another podcast about how remarkably, so to speak, accurate. And you've been talking on social media about your concerns about food price inflation. So is it at, ahead, or behind where you thought it might be from that December report?
Yeah, no, it's funny because we've been getting phone calls since last week, and I certainly didn't see it as news. I mean, because it's exactly what we were expecting to see
It's
for 2021. So
right.
I told the first reporter who called, I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but it's not news. I mean, we talked about it in December. It's just the news is that we were accurate. It's actually happening." And so what's going on right now is that China is basically
Mm.
buying everything and putting a lot of pressure. Most analysts aren't calling it a commodity super cycle. I'm kind of calling it a commodity super cycle without oil participating, essentially, because it's in 2008 it was the same,
Oh,
same,
interesting.
same
Interesting.
thing. Uh, like corn is up over 80%, soy is up over 50%, canola. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Coffee as well. If you actually go out and buy pork, I'm sure, Michael, you'll notice, or you've noticed already, that pork is much more expensive than just a few months ago because the production cycle is much tighter, and chicken will be impacted and eventually beef as well. And
Mm.
so that's kind of the story we gave in December. It's just people probably forgot, and then they're looking back at what we predicted in December with Guelph, Saskatchewan, and UBC, and here we are. And so it's costing more to
Yeah.
produce food. I certainly would want to be a farmer because farmers
Mm.
are going to make a lot of money, and I know that farmers hate when we say that, but the reality is that they will be making money, and they should be proud. And if they want farming to go somewhere, and if they want to see more people wanting to go into farming, they should brag about the fact that they're making money.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, right? Don't keep it a secret. Success. Maybe that's a uniquely Canadian thing. I don't know, but tell. It's a great business to be in. I mean, right back to our first episode of the year, Sherilyn Jolly Nagel, right? Highly technical, very proficient, very sophisticated. A great place to be. I wanted to touch on one quick thing, then we'll get to our special guest, Steve. And you reminded me about it. So the Epicurious, which is
Yeah.
an online recipe site, has declared, or it's come out and declared, that they're going to have no more beef recipes moving forward. And they say it's not about anti-beef; it's
It's
about
about the planet.
pro environment. Is this a random factoid? Is this some kind of cultural tipping point? It feels a little too far to me, but it's a free market; they can do whatever they want. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about that movement because to me, food is mostly about culture. It's about values, and the Canadian culture has always been around uh, animal proteins. Let's face it. I mean, that's we grew up. Most of us have grown up
The
the
trifecta, right? The
trifecta of
trifecta.
meat.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been part of our lives, and I'm not saying that it's going to last, but I think we need to respect people's choices. Now, this website, if they decide to not promote beef anymore, that's their business. I see it as a business decision, really. But in general, when I look at some people judging others that when they eat steak or when they use their barbecues to cook pork or chicken, I do I think it creates a malaise. I don't think we should be allowed to judge other people's food choices in general. We are omnivores at the end of the day, and we have a food culture in Canada, and we should be respectful of that. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I
And you
think
have
that
four barbecues,
it
just so
is
you
known
know.
that raising I I have 4 barbecues, so truth be known. Though I don't eat a lot of red meat actually for a whole bunch of reasons, random reasons. But when I think about the contribution of the cattle industry globally, it does contribute to global warming. But there's a lot of farmers who are very take care of the land, take care of their product. So it does seem like a mix of product is mix of food is the best solution. So as you say, I think it's a bet by Epicurus that there's more plant based people out there. They're making a statement, and they're capitalists. They're going to make a
Of
statement
course.
that's going to help
Yep.
them and their audience. So we'll keep an eye on it. So just another. And by the way, I should mention, I just did an interview with a plant based product company. We're now again the presenting sponsor for the Retail Council of Canada Canadian Grand Prix Food Awards.
Excellent.
And I'm interviewing all the finalists who want to be interviewed, and I'm publishing them starting next week as bonus episodes. And we just, you and I are very much aligned in kind of supporting these. Some of these are very small. These folks that will hear Natabi Foods, Nabi Foods came from Egypt, and now they're in Edmonton, and they started a plant-based, pea-based
Lovely.
chicken burger product. And it's a great story, right? They tell us their story, why they came up with it. So we'll be doing that for the next bunch of months, actually, I hope. And where we fill in, in the weeks with some bonus episodes. The federal budget came out between the last time you and I spoke. Any comments for the food sector? I mean, there seemed to be a little something, something for everybody in that budget. But did anything,
Well, I mean,
did anything stand out for you that for the food sector that was some good
the
news?
motto for Ottawa was sprinkle here, sprinkle there, sprinkle everywhere. Certainly, I was concerned about spending. I think a lot of Canadians were, but our credit rating was not impacted, and so I mean, credit is a relative term. We came into the pandemic in much better shape than most industrialized countries, and the Trudeau government took advantage of it, and so we did spend. We're spending our way out of this pandemic. I My concern is overheating the economy because once we get going, once we're out of this pandemic, I think a lot of people will be
Yeah,
spending again, and the inflation rate will go way up, and the food inflation rate will go way up. So I'm certainly very
yeah,
concerned about that. But if the inflation goes up, at least we're probably going to see interest rates go up as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing given what's going on with real estate these days. And so, because right now it's hitting a lot of consumers very
yeah.
hard.
Calm the
Yeah.
market down. It's
And I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we're feeling it in Halifax.
Well, I mean, well, on a positive note, I have two very good friends who just moved to the Halifax area just because there's a bit of a movement for sure. out of some of the major towns. We're seeing that across North America, where they're looking for a little more balance. They're looking for just a beautiful place to live, like Halifax. Is kind of benefiting from that a little bit. So it's interesting. And the GDP forecast in the Bank of Canada is we're going to be 4.5% next year. So that's great GDP. That's stunning GDP growth.
We have some catching up to do, to be honest.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So thanks again to the folks at Novos for being our presenting sponsor. And if you like this, if you like what you heard today, you can subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review. Be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the food service, restaurant, grocery industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois.
Sylvain, great talking to you, and look forward to speaking and seeing you again next episode.
Take care.